Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mother Fluffers. You'll pick up the fat lad with the fluffing house. What I can tell you is, it's a bloody sight warmer over here than it is where that mask is. Myself and Matt just been talking before we came out, and if you can hear a little buzzing noise in the background, I'm pretty sure that'll be a fan heater. Because it's, what is it, mate, about -5 right now?
Yeah, -5. It's warm.
Warm. Warm, he tells me. -5. And it gets in the winter, he said, to -40. -40? That's a place where only confident men take a piss outside.
Yep. Get good at your name in the snow.
Mate, tell you what, it'd freeze on before it hit the ground, wouldn't it? That's ridiculous. -4. I mean, can you actually move about when it's that cold?
What's that, sorry?
Can you actually walk around when it's that cold, when it's minus? I don't think I've ever...
You just can't stop, that's...
I mean, cold, you got stuck somewhere in that shoe, that ain't good.
Well, if you got stuck somewhere, but you could, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Do you have, like, bears and stuff where you are there? We're talking, like, polar bears, grizzly bears, what have you got?
There's black bears. You get a little more west, you got the grizzly bears. But no polar bears. You got to go a lot more north for that. So
sort of in Canada, where are you actually based? Where is it located within Canada, for those who don't know Red Deer, or like myself?
You know where Montana is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm about 10 hours north of Montana.
Wow, what a place. I thought there were parts of Canada that weren't cold, but I'm yet to find one. Everybody I speak to, they always tell me when it's winter for real.
Yeah, some places aren't as bad as others, but so the more north you get, the colder it gets, right?
So do you work outside a lot, mate? Normally in the summer? And what is it you do for work over there, mainly?
I run downhole tools in the oil field, so yeah, when we're out working, we're outside the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. In between times, being one of the best arm wrestlers in the world, which is what we're here to discuss, mate. And I had a lot of feedback after the first show. Obviously, I don't know whether you've seen any of your comments. I've got a lot of personal messages relating to this, and a lot of them, interestingly, were around technical stuff. I found that quite unusual. I thought it'd be more about sort of mental things. We got a couple like that, but a lot about technical stuff. And one of the recurring themes, so I'm not going to say the names on these questions because I think I had about 11 questions on the same topic there or thereabouts. And it was relating to your top rolling style, the style of top roll that you do. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes from the back end of part 1. For those of you who haven't seen the first part of Matt's interview, ladies and gents, link's going to be in the description. Go back, check that out, and then come back and pick up where we are now. But the main gist of it, Matt, was that you spoke at the end of episode 1 about nuances in your style, saying I think you were training with Aaron Langell, and you said you started to pick up that as you progressed through your evolution as a top roller, you got to find that just different positions of the hand, different positions of the elbow on the pad, and so on and so on, translated to an entirely different thing depending on what style of arm wrestler you were competing against. Now, the questions, number one, how many sort of styles within the style are you aware of that you're using? Have you got sort of 3 go-to top roll styles or 4 go-to top roll styles? If so, how many is there? How many do you sort of clearly define of, okay, this style of puller, I'll take a step to the left, I'll take a step to the right, I'll position my hand differently. How many of those are you consciously walking through in a match?
I don't really walk through all of them in a match. It's more so off a feel. Usually the first match, you can kind of tell where more of his power is or where he's leading from. And usually that's where I try to attack.
So you're very much, as I'd have expected, you're very much doing it off the feel of the opponent rather than the style of arm wrestler that you're pulling.
Yeah, it's more so, like I can usually get an idea what somebody's going to be doing from watching them compete in previous matches, but it's you don't really know until you feel it. So, a prime example, Jerry, I thought Jerry specifically went for his flop wrist press. And I didn't think that he actually went for a carve-in and a hook. And if his hand went, he resorted to that flop wrist press. So it was a bit of a learning curve there. I was wondering, what the fuck? Oh, how come he's doing this? Like, I thought he was going to flop wrist press, and it was then that I realized, well, okay, that's not where he's going. And I didn't know it, because 90% of the time he ends up in that flop wrist press because he gets his hand taken. But his energy is generated in a completely different area than what I had anticipated, and I didn't know that until I actually gripped up and I actually felt him. So, but there's pretty much every different type of style, there's a different setup for what you want to engage, right?
It's funny, when I've pulled dead wrist pressers, when I pulled Jerry particularly, I always found that I could have a better success with any dead wrist presser, or even if they were going for a hook or were at a really solid hook, as Jerry does, if I stayed on the line between wrist and hand. So I would ride the line between the wrist and the hand and literally step across. So I would step left to try and keep myself in a position where I could apply a lot more side pressure safely.
Yeah,
I found like if I had any sort of reversing or any kind of supination in the movement, they would access that really easy. Is that something that you found or did find when you pulled Jerry?
Yeah, definitely. It's you want to be more across the palm, because a lot of their power is generated from their palm, especially the flop wrist press. When they get into it, all that power is generated right from the palm. So, and like you said, driving more to the left and to the side, because you want to get that disengagement from his hand and his shoulder. Because if you just went straight across and he still has his shoulder in, he's got his game. So you need to just slightly get that little bit of separation from the shoulder, which is going to be from the drag back and to the side. And you want to control where his power is and keep his power more in the center of your hand. I realized if I'm setting up too high with him and he's too much more on his fingers, he's able to apply more pressure. If you're more on the center of the hand, you're more able to control the angle his arm be in. Instead of him being here, he's slightly a little more here. It's a lot harder to generate that side pressure with his bicep a little more exposed, right?
Who was more difficult to, in fact, this relates to one of the questions we had, but it was less, I'm sort of butchering it a little bit and joining it onto the two. But, so for those of you who did write in, this is the question about the Todd Hutchins scenario. Which of those arm wrestlers did you find most difficult to deal with, Matt? Was it, and I'm talking specifically from a side pressure perspective, because everybody thinks about Todd as having remarkable side pressure, really heavy, intense side pressure. Was that more or less than you encountered when you pulled Jerry?
Jerry's a different angle. Jerry's more an experienced arm wrestling angle, if that makes sense. Like,
more orthodox.
Yeah, like if you grip up with an amateur and they're strong and all they have is just straight side pressure, it almost hurts a little more.
Yeah.
Like it's...
Yeah, it feels clunky, doesn't it?
You control them more. Yeah, you can control them more, but it just hurts a little more. Just because an unorthodox angle that when you're training with guys that know what they're doing, they're not usually going in that angle. So Todd Hutchins was definitely a lot more to deal with. I didn't actually anticipate him having that much side pressure as much as he did. And out of anybody I've ever arm wrestled, I'd say by far he had the most side pressure. And it wasn't just this side pressure. It was just straight side.
Did you feel any back with it as well, mate? Because I know that Todd's spoken to us a lot about the fact that he incorporates a lot more back pressure. Just pissing around with him on the table and observing him arm wrestle. Certainly in certain pulls, he tends to apply a lot of back pressure through the while. Like, forget about his hand, but he's coming here, like this, just rotating away. Is that something you felt from him, or was he trying to close you down differently?
There was a bit of it, but it wasn't so much back as much as it was just straight side. Like, it was... There was some side, but there was no pronation or anything like that with the thumb. It was just more straight this way. So, and yeah, he, like that day, it was his day. like
Who,
by
who
far
felt
physically.
stronger?
I honestly say that day I pulled Todd, that was probably the biggest, strongest Todd I've ever seen. Like,
Yeah, he was. I don't know what he weighed, but he was massive, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was 249. So I was
249.
249. I was 2 pounds lighter than what he was actually. So
wow, you're what, Matt? 6'7", or are you 6'6"?
6'5" and a half.
6'5" and a half, 6'6". Yeah. So yeah, and Todd's got to be what, 5'10", 5'11".
I think about 5'10"-ish.
Yeah. So big boy, thick.
Yeah.
Who felt stronger, mate? Todd or Jerry? Just in raw power, top end. Who felt strongest?
Well, I was able to pin Jerry. I wasn't able to pin Todd. I went in.
Was your shape very comparable at the time of the?
It was similar. When I went to pull Todd, I was probably in. I was in the best physical shape I'd ever been in my life. I was just a raw 245. I was maybe sporting 3.5%, 4% body fat at the time. Like I was feeling like I could move a Mack truck. Leading right up to that, something ended up happening. My mind wasn't there. I thought that my physical strength was going to be enough, but I wasn't able to think properly for that match. But his power was his power, and if that had a factor in it, I believe mental is a huge part of the game. If you're not mentally prepared, then there's almost not even much of a point showing up. I was mentally prepared leading up to it. That day came, everything just kind of fell apart for me. As for it, that's just how it works sometimes, right? Sometimes.
And I know you're not making any excuses, Matt, and we're not going to go into detail, but I know personally that we're not talking like small things here. We're talking very, very significant life distractions. So, yeah, I know you're not the kind of guy that makes excuses, but anybody who does know the backstory to that knows that you got a bit of a bombshell on. It's actually testament to your character that you continued and saw the thing through. So my hat came off to you that day, mate, for sure. In terms of what you just spoke about then, that leads us to segues into another one of the areas that we did get questions on a lot. And it was around the fact that you seem to pull pissed off. You pull angry. The famous quote, "I love you, but I fucking hate you." One of my favourite quotes ever by Man or Man's Monkey. I absolutely loved that. I was laughing. I couldn't commentate, mate. I was laughing my head off. Thought that was epic stuff. And that was against Sylvain Perron, obviously. But you seem to be, I mean, you're a very, very endearing character. I don't think there's anybody in the circuit got a bad word to say about you at all. From any of the pullers, you get on with as far as I'm aware, there's no bad blood between you and any other arm wrestler. But when you're at the table, you are revved and you seem to pull pissed off. One of the questions was, are you angry when you're up there? Are you getting yourself into that place? Do you have to sort of work on that? Is it something you've created, that situation where you go in there in the red mist?
Yeah, I definitely need to create it. Naturally, I'm not an angry person. Some things set me off sometimes. Lately, nothing's really been setting me off. But I need to get there because I honestly, personally feel if I go in normal, hey, how you doing, buddy, blah, blah, like I'm not physically as strong as 70% of the guys that I'm competing against. And the only way I'm able to get myself to their level is if I get myself pissed off. I get my adrenaline going where the hair feels like it's standing up on the back of my neck and I'm literally just revving. It's definitely takes a lot of building up to get there. So like for weeks leading up to it, I'll be visualizing the ref, I'll be visualizing the crowd, I'll be visualizing my opponent, and I think about how much work and everything I put into it, and I literally tried to get myself in a spot where I absolutely hate the fucking guy. Because if there's any part of me that doesn't actually hate him at the time, my adrenaline kind of drops down. So I almost get myself in a mental state where everything I've worked for, everything I have, everything I've done my whole life. He's trying to take all of it away from me, and I'm just not going to let it happen. So, like, I'll picture him throwing rocks at my dog, pushing my kids in the dirt, and beating my wife, right? So, and I literally have to get to that point myself where I feel I'm physically strong enough to be able to compete with those guys.
It's interesting you say that you believe you're not as strong as 70% of the guys that you arm wrestle against. We'll go into a little bit more of the detail around that, because one of the sort of interesting nuances there is the fact that you are, whilst you're a very tall puller, you carry very, very little excess. What's on you is workable, usable power. I mean, there's a famous shot on, and we used it actually on the first episode. In the thumbnail, it's a picture of you there. Now, the original photo of that, if you see the quality picture there, I mean, talk about vascularity. Jesus Christ, you look like a 6'6" hard-on. I've never seen anything, I mean, veins popping like you've never seen in your goddamn life. Now, you were pulling traditionally around the 225 class. Yourself, Devon was another one. You know, that was sort of your stomping ground. You could say the same for Marcio. How much of a power difference have you seen when you move up and you pull in the supers? You know, you're suddenly standing across from Nick Zena, you're across from Jerry Caderet, from the really big boys, and going into the 600 series, there were other people potentially on your radar like Wagner Bortolato or Ryan Espy, who's a big mother fluffer.
There's power difference. I don't know. I really don't think there's much power difference between the top 225ers and the super heavyweights. They definitely have more tools. It's harder to deal with. Like Marcio's frame is massive. Like, Marcio looks like a football player wearing football pads when he walks into the room, but he doesn't have the hand of a super heavyweight. His hand is a little smaller. It's a lot easier to deal with. You grab on to somebody like Nick Zena, who's naturally a 320, 330 pound man. His hand is just naturally 1 inch thicker without doing anything than majority of the 225ers. So it's harder to deal with the bigger hands. You're not able to get as much of a wrap around the hands as you would like. And my game's the hand game. Right. Yeah. So the more hand control, the more I can swallow their hand, the more control I'm going to have. So the super heavyweights, it's more, there's a little bit more raw power in there, but it's just harder to work with the tools that they have because they're just naturally thicker in the palms and everything else. So
I'll stop rolling, Matt, whether you are working with let's say you're working with an assumption that you're not the strongest guy at the arm wrestling table that day. Do you focus a great deal of your training on power, or do you train a lot for precision, for speed, which you're fast twitch to the core? I mean, interestingly, for me, that sort of whole discussion carries across all combat sport. I mean, recently, Adesanya, Paulo Costa in the UFC, and you heard Adesanya a lot saying, or Adesanya, I've got to start saying his name right, saying there that he believed that Paulo Costa was all about the power. He was all about precision. We've heard it time and time and time again. Precision beats power. Timing beats speed. You're obviously extremely fast. Your direction is a little bit what we talk about in the name, the wild horse. You're as nuts as it gets. You seem to accelerate 0 to 100 and something's going to blow up and you're not sure where. Or are you? How conscious are you of your directions, of sort of nuances within your hits?
It's not so much as the hit for the pad, but it's more a twitch and a hit for position. Mm-hmm. So if I'm pulling somebody that I know is just a stronger puller, I'm going to try not to load to the gills with him. I'm going to try to get him a little looser where I feel I'm quicker than him, and I can get to the position and throw him into a position that I feel more comfortable in quicker than he can engage his muscles. So it's not so much just driving for the pad. It'll be like a quick pop right for the position that I need to put him into a more uncomfortable position. And from there, it just, if I'm in my comfort zone, I'm revved, my adrenaline's going, and he's not in his comfort zone, advantage me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot of people have talked about the effectiveness of a long-levered top roller. Guys like yourself, Vitaly Lalatin, and the number of people that really struggle to deal with your style of arm wrestling, that fast, explosive top roller. How much of your time when you're training do you spend working exclusively on the top roll? This is one of the questions that we got a great deal. A lot of people saying, how much time does Matt devote to other stuff? And a lot of this, I think, came from, again, in episode 1, where you spoke about the fact that, as most people do, you came to the sport, you didn't know what a top roll was. You were basically grabbing hold of dudes and hammering them sideways quick. Do you still find that in training you're spending a large proportion of your time training other positions you're not known for, sort of to supplement your top roll, or are you just sharpening that one weapon?
I'm sharpening everything up. I'll still spend, I'd say about 50% of my practice is still concentrating on the top roll. I still feel that there is more room for improvement on it. And I want to be a master of one as opposed to a jack of all. Because I feel if you can get one and you can absolutely master your one move, as long as you can get the angle right, there's usually not too often you're getting pulled out of it. So I'm still spending 50% of it is still my top roll, just to keep it conditioned, keep it up, trying to continue to improve it. And because that's my bread and butter. My hook will never be as good as my top roll. My press will never be as good as my top roll, no matter how much I work on it, just because I'm more naturally designed for top roll. My muscle reflexes, everything work better towards it. So I'm going to continue to concentrate on it. I'm still concentrating on the other areas, the other 50% of the practice, but majority is still my top roll, because that's going to be my go-to, and I want to make sure that's in the best shape it can possibly be in, and I've got the best angles to work with throughout the whole game. I'm working on the other things. Should I get stopped or caught into that position, I'm able to hang on to actually work into a position to be able to maintain or get my top roll again. So even if I get sucked into a hook, I'll do a lot of my training in a hook, but it's more, what do I need to do from here to be able to get my top roll back? Because I know 90% of the guys, 80% of the guys that I'm competing against, especially in the super heavyweight division with the WAL, there's no way in hell I'll ever be able to bang with them in a hook position. Like my hook's probably a provincial, maybe a national level, but it's not, and will probably never be a world level hook. So it's more about stalemate my opponent and being able to get back into a position where I can get back to where my more comfortable position or most of my power. So.
I remember I had a conversation with a couple of guys when we were at the World Arm Wrestling League finals in Atlanta. I was doing an interview there, and one of the guys said, which kind of arm wrestlers excite you the most in terms of potential? And your name was the first name that I spoke about that day. And my comment there, which isn't meant to be derogatory at all, was that I didn't believe you were at capped 60% of your potential yet in terms of elite level arm wrestling. And I was questioned as to why, and I said that because often guys who are as frightening as Matt is in terms of his all-round style and capabilities are very difficult to train, because who the hell's going to train you? You're having to go around to 5 people in the country that can contain what you've got. Nobody's hanging on to it, because if you hit them, it's over. Who do you actually train with, mate? Who are the guys that focus on? Are you sort of the lead dog in your camp, a bit like Devon is with the high hookers, or have you got guys there that still work on your finesse and your technical roundedness?
I'm definitely one of the more knowledgeable ones in my club. I got a couple more guys like Fraser that's been in the game just as longer than I have. He's probably been in 25 years. Very technical, very fast twitched. I take advice from everybody. Like we got some guys that have only been into it for a year, and they end up watching one of my matches, and they watch the other person's match, and like, hey, I seen him do this. Maybe you should think about this. And it's like, holy fuck, I didn't even think about that. Mm-hmm. So it's just because you have more experience, you have more knowledge, and say you built somebody up to an area, they still may be able to see something that you don't. So it's not. I take everybody's advice. Everybody's consider like an angle that I should go into consideration. And the biggest thing is I'll try it on the table. So when we're in practice and I get somebody going through a position and say they're half the strength than I am, that doesn't matter because I can still figure out what angle is going to work better from there. So if I'm pulling with him and he's putting 100% in and I have to beat him with 70% pressure, and then all of a sudden I'll go into a different position where all of a sudden I'm only putting 30% pressure, I remember that. And that sinks in. So it's like, okay, well, it was a little bit easier if I just drove my elbow up a little bit as opposed to continue to drive my elbow back. So I'm able to learn even from more inexperienced arm wrestlers that we have in our club. Mm-hmm. So, and if I'm having a practice, like it's like our practices aren't about beating the shit. It's about beating the shit of each other, but it's not about trying to hurt each other.
No.
We usually never practice hits during practice unless they're like, hey, I want to practice a hit. One guy will go 10% strength and the other guy will straight out go through his hits. Don't move ready kind of deal. But if I'm stronger than them, I'll just let them get everything they want. I'll give them my hand. I'll let them put me in a shitty position close to the pin line. I'll hold on to them and then I'll slowly work it back. I'll take them back to my side of the table and then I'll let them take it back. Let them come out of my hand, out of my fingertips. I let them start on their side of the table. I let them start over my thumb knuckle, sometimes even over my thumbnail. I'll grab them a lot lower on the hand. So whenever I'm training, I'm usually training in a bad position. Yeah. Usually training in a bad position with a disadvantage. Because then when I actually get to a competition and they go center of the table's got to come this way, you need to get down off the thumb knuckle, everything just all of a sudden feels so much better. Mm-hmm. So it's like a huge boost of confidence when someone's always burying their thumb knuckle in practice and starting with a bent wrist to get up to a table and all of a sudden they got straight wrists. I've got my thumb knuckle exposed and they're not starting in a more advantaged position. It's like, oh, it just kind of feels that much better, right? So being one of the stronger ones in my group, I let them get more. I let them get more and then I slowly work for it back. Let them take it again and I slowly work for it back, right?
Do you study a lot of guys online who you aspire to, or have you got favourite arm wrestlers stylistically that you watch and you learn from or copy or try to emulate at all, or have you got moves that you see and you think, that's cool, I like how that guy's doing that, and try to incorporate that?
Not overly. I don't usually pay much attention to other arm wrestlers anymore unless I know I'm going to have a match against them. I'm more concentrating on myself. I used to watch Devon Larratt. Brezink is probably my biggest inspiration for my top roll. Mm-hmm. Just the fact of when people would be deep into a hook with them and just his ability to be able to peel them out. Mm-hmm. That was, for me, I thought that was just the coolest fucking thing anybody could do. And that was what I concentrated all my energy on, was my pronation. To be able to get people from a deep hook position and literally just take everything away from them by peeling their hand up. So I would say it was Brezink's top roll, his low hand top roll, and his ability to be able to can open people's hands is what really inspired me into developing the shit out of my top roll. So, because I thought that was the most demoralizing thing that you can do to your opponents is if they're here and you literally just take their wrist and peel it outside.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing's for sure, it shows you've got complete mastery of the hand and wrist if you're able to do that. And it shuts down the options that they've got in the match massively, which is pretty demoralising for anyone, isn't it? If somebody takes away like the ace chip for most people.
There's about maybe 5 to 10% of the arm wrestlers out there that can actually pull when their hand is taken. There's not many arm wrestlers where as soon as their wrist goes from here to here, they lose everything.
Yeah.
As soon as that you get that slight crack in it, everything just folds. You know, like a prime example is Chris Chandler. Chris Chandler is one of the strongest motherfuckers out there. As soon as his wrist goes slightly in a negative angle, poof, everything just falls apart for him.
Yeah.
So even Marcio, same thing. Like it's not too often you see Marcio pulling in a negative wristed position. Like he loses so much power once you get that hand from him, right?
Yeah, Marcio, I think, to be fair to him, he's got the ability to pull anywhere, but I think Marcio, as he's got long in the tooth, he's very protective of his elbows and biceps. He's done so much damage, got so much scar tissue over the years, he's like that, you know. You start getting him into bad positions you don't want to know. I mean, how many times at WL did you see? You had a similar season, actually, where your entire season was just propagated by damage, you know, you'd dislocate your finger, you'd pull a muscle in your ass, you'd break your foot. Every time you went to the table, I think once did you do your hamstring in one match as well?
Yeah, I blew my quad one, I blew my back against Marcio, dislocated my finger and dislocated my elbow and blew something in my fucking elbow when I pulled Jerry. So
you had a horrific year.
The worst part about it was my best physical, like the strongest I ever was when I pulled Marcio. Mm-hmm. When I went in to pull Marcio, and then it was the rest of the season, I was just trying to get myself back up to that point because I was dealing with injury after injury after injury. Right? Had I not have gotten injured against Marcio that first round, who knows how the rest of that season would have went. Because I would have just continued to progress in my strength. And it was, I went down about 30-40%, and I got back up to about 80-90 when I pulled Nick Zena. Then all of a sudden I damaged my finger. So that ruined my ability to train in about 50% of the different areas. So then it was trying to build myself back up again. And then I went to pull Devon, and I couldn't move my quad, you know. And then it was, you know, and you don't even realize how much energy you exert on the table and how much your legs actually play effect into it until you actually injure one and you're trying to compete. Yeah. So then it was, you know, I was trying to fucking get my weight back up and trying to get my base ready to go again when I went to pull Jerry, you know. So it was the whole season, it was just trying to play catch up. I wasn't progressing at all through the season. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like snakes and ladders, because you've had a situation where you've come in, you've been absolutely firing on all cylinders. You want big matches, and everybody, you know, so many guys like yourself who were what I describe as the chasing pack, you know. You're not maybe the very, very best, but you're hungry to be that guy. And I know from experience there is literally nobody that you won't arm wrestle. I mean, Christ, you've taken on absolute monsters, one after the other after the other. Talked about your match in UAL with John Brzenk at a time when John was a bad man. You know, you pulled Devon. How many times have you pulled Devon in WL? Like 2, 3? I mean, you met him in the
during the WL series. It's only been the once.
But you met him every year in the
bloody. We met each other at regionals a bunch of times, and in finals and stuff like that. We were always banging against each other. So
Bath, another one who you had numerous career enders with. Marcio, Zena, Hutchins, the list goes on, Caderet. You know, the list is just ridiculous. It's like a who's who of arm wrestling. But with that comes that massive risk of injury, doesn't it? That damn it, you know, you could easily tweak something out. You can, and particularly when you're accelerating like you are, you know, you're hitting that hard, that fast. Do you ever think that's a sort of, are you conscious of that? Are you aware of the fact that when you're asking for these big names, it's a bit of a run the gauntlet situation?
No, it actually inspires me more. I actually, when I'm going against somebody that I'm worried about, I get more motivation, more drive to actually become better. If I'm going against somebody that I feel I'm just going to own, my motivation goes down. So, and I know there's huge risk when I'm going against them guys, but the reward I would get from actually being able to get wins on them and control them and beat them, I personally find is way better and way more inspiring than the risk that could occur from it. So I don't really think so much about the risk. I'm more thinking about the reward if I do end up getting there, right? So the same thing, like when I pulled Nick Zine and my finger was bugged, I was like, fuck, should I just pull out? And I was like, wow, I'm already here. You know what I mean? How cool is it going to look if I finish him off? And I'm already here. I'm already in pain. I'm already broken. Why stop now? I might as well get a bigger reward.
Yeah, I'm committed. Right? Might as well do it properly. Yeah. So who would you say has been your most difficult adversary over the last couple of years, mate? I mean, I know obviously John was a massive issue and always is going to be. And maybe, I remember at the time when we were at the UAL thing and you said, well, you know, it's a no-lose situation for me, which was a very accurate assessment of it. Have you felt recently, when you've been pulling in the World Armwrestling League and particularly the SuperMatch series, have you felt more pressure because of the fact that you've got that notoriety now? You've arrived and everybody, you know, you're no longer the underdog necessarily. A lot of people have got your back. I mean, you're clearly one of the most popular pullers on the roster.
Yeah, I would say my matches with Devon are always the one that give me the most motivation, just because I've gotten some wins on them. I've gotten some should have been wins, but they never called them, stuff like that. So and I feel almost every time we pulled, I've had the capability of being able to beat him. There was just one slight little angle I messed up on, or I gassed myself out too much, or I played around too much at the beginning, or I fell too much in his head games. So it's Devon, I would say, is probably my biggest adversary when it comes to who I want to beat, just because I felt I've come so fucking close so many times, and there's just been little factors that have taken it away from me, and I feel I'm like when I'm on top and I'm injury free, I feel I'm right fucking there with them. So, and it's been something just like from my first provincials where he's gotten that win. It's that one goal I really want to achieve. And it seems like every time I get right fucking there, a little something gets pulled back from it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's definitely my biggest one that obviously I want to get before he gets too old and he's not able to perform in the way that he's been able to perform the last few years, right? So,
how good is Devon Larratt?
He's not as strong as what everybody thinks he is. He's definitely not. But it's his angles. It's his mind games. He's not the strongest opponent, but everything that he brings to the table, he brings with the full effort. There's no slacking in the different angles. There's no slacking in the mind games. There's no slacking in getting in the ref's head. There's to be messing around with you, even in the setup. He's constantly going for positions. So you need to be literally 100% on your game, on your toes, thinking about every little thing that he could be throwing at you in order to be able to get that. Because if you're too busy thinking about technique and you're not thinking about what he's saying to you, he's playing every angle. There's nobody out there that plays more angles than Devon does. So,
do you think yeah, no worries, mate. Do you think, Matt, in your encounters then with Devon, a lot of the outcome has been dictated by, for want of a better word, professionalism on Devon's part in terms of utilizing every available option?
Definitely, because he does, right? Like I go in and I'm just try to get myself pissed off, and I try to think about what I need to do and worry about that. And if he's working something that ain't working for him, or he feels he's not getting what he needs from it, he'll hit something else. Mm-hmm. And he comes in with this whole fucking box and his tool of tricks, and he sets it out, and he's just throwing everything at you, right? There's no there's no, I'm concentrating on this. This is what we're going to play with today. He's like, we're fucking playing with everything today, right?
Yeah.
So he'll be playing the refs. He'll be playing the crowd. He'll be playing the opponent. He'll be playing, during the match. He's doing different things. He's talking to you. He's definitely the most well-rounded arm wrestler for tricks in his tool bag than there is anybody out there, as far as I'm concerned. So,
if you look at your matches to date, and obviously the ones that are potentially in front of you, and the guys that are currently on the roster, who are the blokes that you would like to, first of all, ground trodden? If you look at any of the wins you've had first, which to you means most, which to you is most impressive of the wins you've got, Matt?
I would say my win over Marcio was definitely one of my favorite highlights.
It's mega.
I found that put me on that level. Like there's and kind of got me into that elite category.
Yeah.
It was always unsure. Even when I pulled John, that year when he ended up pulling WL, he was phenomenal. When I had pulled him, it wasn't 100% John. He wasn't fully trained. He went in cocky, thinking he was just going to own me. So I was able to bang with him. That felt amazing. But I wasn't pulling the strongest, most physically fit John that there was. When I pulled Marcio came in and he was literally blowing people apart and breaking people in practice.
Yeah.
Prior to when we pulled, he was the heaviest he'd ever been. Like, he even came up, all the guys were like, man, I've never felt Marcio so strong in my life. And unless you're on that elite level where I feel you're top 20, top 30 in the world, you ain't going to beat Marcio. Like, nobody just comes in that is just good and beats Marcio.
No, you look at Marcio's resume, there's no bad losses, there's no losses against that guy that he shouldn't have taken the loss against. It's always a serial killer that's done something with Marcio, and he's won and lost them. Who hasn't he beat? I mean, Christ, he's beaten everybody there is to beat. He's like the gatekeeper of excellence, isn't he?
Yeah.
You do something with that guy, you are definitely the man. You know what I mean? You're right there. So it's a tremendous. At what point in that match did you know, oh, it's on now? I mean, did you go in confident? Did you see yourself as favourite?
I didn't see myself as a favorite. I was nervous as shit going into that. Just from watching the training videos and everything else with him, pulling with other people, I was going, oh my God, like, what am I getting myself into? But I had never beaten him prior to that. Like, we not so much completely owned him in the right arm. We had some matches, a little bit stuff back and forth, and I knew he was coming in the best shape he had ever been in his life. But because I had pulled him before, I had an idea of where his strengths and where his weaknesses were. Mm-hmm. So, and with him, he did have a smaller hand. Did have a longer arm. I know Marcio likes to really drive up from the beginning. So I just exploited that angle to where when he was trying to drive up, I just matched him in his drive up. And I didn't let him get over top of my hand. So when he went to go and he hit, I was just able to control his hand. And from there, it fell into mine. So it was pretty much the first match where we went into the straps and I was able to take and control his hand is where I realized I got this. Mm-hmm. Prior to leading up to that, I had doubts. Like they were going out of style because it's Marcio Barboza, right?
Yeah.
He's completed, he's banged with, he's been, in my eyes, even still to this date, he's still top 20 in the world.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, mate. That is a hell of a win. And going to the opposite side of that same coin, I suppose, if you look back at the losses you've taken, not many of them, and always against absolutely horrible arm wrestlers, stylistically. We'll start with the two big ones there, Jerry and Todd. Anybody you want again? Is this, have you got like...
I want them both again, to tell you the truth.
Right.
Todd, I'd really like to have that one back, just because I don't feel I performed the best of my ability. I wasn't able to think the way I should have been thinking. I was putting myself, because he has so much side pressure, and when I was hitting, I wasn't engaging my shoulder and behind my arm. Like I was hitting, I'd be out here, and I was trying to hang on to his side pressure with just muscles and tendons. There was no other areas of my body that I was using to help defend that side pressure or backing up my arm. So Todd, I really, really want that one back. And Jerry, I obviously want that one back too, because I figured some shit out, you know, like it was, the first two matches were just a write-off. I was trying something new that really didn't fucking work. And I went back to my corner. I looked at Ron. Ron was standing in my corner at the time, and I'm like, man, that ain't fucking working. He's like, man, just forget about everything. He says, just do what you do. He says, do your move. And he says, you got nothing to lose because this ain't working for you. You're looking like a fool. And I honestly thought there was no way in hell, if Jerry was able to get into a swapper's position in behind his arm, that I was ever going to be able to pull him out of it. And when match 3 started and he got into position and I held him, I actually felt comfortable. Like, I was like, holy shit, like, I might be able to do this. And it was a couple drives. I ended up driving. I seen his hand get separated a little bit from his shoulder. And you never see me press. Like, that was probably the only match you've ever seen me drive in behind a press. And everything just felt so comfortable when I got there to be able to get in behind my press, and I was able to execute it. Match number 3 was where I figured out the recipe. Match number 4, I forgot half the ingredients.
Did you miss that? There was one of them. I don't know the round. Was it 4? One of them I thought you missed. It just looked like you missed it completely. It looked like you had that sort of goldfish shell shock look on your face. That, you know, like mistimed that. Was there one of those rounds where you just didn't fire?
Well, the first 2, it didn't even feel like I was able to get a hit in. It was just bang, right through, like, didn't engage nothing, didn't stand a chance whatsoever. Match 3 I won. It was match 4, the last one that he won to win the whole match. I ended up getting into the position. I felt comfortable, and for some reason, instead of separated away from his side a bit and then get behind it, I wanted to get behind my shoulder and behind my arm, my shoulder behind my arm, while he was already on top of my arm, which was stupid, absolutely stupid. So I ended up going from step 1 right to step 3 or 4 without even thinking about it. So he was in here, and I went to try to drive in behind before I even had him separated from the shoulder, and that's where my elbow just kind of dislocated. It wasn't until about 3-4 months after that where I realized it was dislocated. Like, I couldn't straighten my arm out for like 3 months. Ended up going to Washington, went to a tournament in Washington. They asked me to come up, so we went up there, played around there, and even the same thing, like, can get my arm to about an 80-degree angle, and it just felt like my elbow was hyperextending. And I went and seen my physio. I'm like, man, this has been going on for a while. And says, I don't know what really going on. And he grabbed my arm, did a couple things, did a couple movements, and he's like, oh, deep breath. I took a deep breath, and he popped my elbow back into place. He's like, your elbow has been out of place for the last 3-4 months, you hillbilly, right? So I didn't even realize it was just the angle, how much pressure he had when I went to roll in behind it. It just popped it out of place.
Wish list, mate. You know, wish list. How's 2021 look if we're COVID free? Hopefully, how's 2021 look for Matt Mask in terms of next steps? Where do you see your give me this guy, give me this guy, give me this guy, give me that match? Who are those names and why?
I don't even really have any. Obviously, I want the losses that I had back. I'd love to pull Todd again. I'd love to pull Jerry again. I obviously want to pull Devon again. I'd love to have a chance at Michael Todd just to see where I can go with him, because I feel majority of the people that have pulled him don't have the hand that I have when my hand's feeling good. And I feel I could possibly do more with him than a lot of people think I could. But that's a match I need to earn. Right? It's not something that they're just going to throw at me because I haven't earned it. I've taken losses to Jerry. I've taken losses to Todd Hutchins. But obviously that's where I want to be. I want to be up at the top going for that heavyweight hammer, but I don't want to just give it to me. I want to earn it. So I even told, I said, I don't care who you give me, but this is where I want to be at the end of it. So whoever they want to throw at me, I don't care. I'm ready for when the time comes. Whoever they want to put my way is who I'm going to pick out. If they want to keep me as a gatekeeper and new people come into the league and have me banging with them and showing them the WL way, well then, so be it. As long as I'm getting used and as long as eventually I can work my way and earn my way to that title spot, that's where I want, right? So.
Well, as a sort of crowner for this episode, mate, we had Ryan Espy on, right? Another top class Canadian the other day, and at the end of the episode, I don't know him. He just showed, Turner Muskie was there. I was like, fuck, big. There he was. But he said to me at the end of the episode, look, I don't think that I'm anywhere near my potential. And I've thought that about you for a long period of time. But what's your opinion? Do you believe that your time investment has paid off bang on and you're where you need to be? Or do you see yourself with rungs on a ladder and you're halfway up? Are you? Where's the story at?
If you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd be telling you, this is where I want to be. I wanted to be one of those guys that people wanted to come to their tournaments. I wanted to be someone that everybody feared when I got into their weight class. I wanted to be the person asked sometimes, hey, we'd love to have you come out to our tournament, or just people wanting me to be involved. I'd say, I'm where I want to be. But now that I've gotten to this position, I'm not where I want to be. I want to keep trying to push myself. I want to see how far I can go. Do I feel I've reached my full potential? No, I don't. If I felt I've reached my full potential, I probably wouldn't keep going. So it's that feeling that I feel like I have so much more to prove and there's so many more gains to be made that is keeping me in this. So once I feel that I've accomplished everything and I've hit my peak, at my top, my motivation probably isn't going to be there as much. So I don't feel I've reached my full potential. I feel that there's so many more gains and so many little areas and so much more shit that I need to learn along the way. And the only way I'm going to compete against those opponents that I haven't competed against. So I'm nowhere close to where I want to be. So.
Scary thought for a lot of people out there in that division, mate, I'll tell you that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at 53 minutes of this episode, only the second one with the wild horse, Matt Mask. We're nowhere near done with this guy. Same thing as last time, guys. Ladies and gents, send me the questions. Put your questions in the comments. Send them to Matt. We will be back on with the wild horse next week for episode 3. If this is your first visit to Supernatural Strength, please like, share, subscribe, let everybody know about it. And keep yourself safe out there, guys. Until we see you next time, take it easy, peeps.